thanks guys for coming. Thanks for some new faces here. So this is going to be the first in a multi-part series of building your first mobile application. Emily's going to kind of give you an introduction over what the whole series is going to be about and some of the assets, and then Ryan a little bit later on after that we'll give you kind of a quick presentation on how to use Ionic Creator to kind of build a kind of a visual prototype of your app.
Okay, hi everybody, I'm Emily. Thank you all again, one more time for coming. And this is going to be a 4-workshop series. The first 3 workshops will be in the fall, and then the 4th one will be probably in January. So at the end of this 3-workshop series in the fall, you would have built your first, or maybe not first, but a mobile app. And by the end of the 4th one, it will actually be, we'll show you how you can deploy it and get it out there in the App Store, or is it Android?
Play Store.
Yes, Play Store. I don't know that. So today's workshop is building a front end with Ionic Creator, which we have the link up on the screen. If you haven't created an account, then do so now. Second one is building a basic backend using Prisma. Then we'll be connecting the front end to a database, and then showing how you can display those results. We just wanted really, really clear, simple steps. So this whole thing is supposedly something that even I can do, and I do not have a full-on tech background, and so I think that this workshop is definitely for beginners, this series. So we did choose Ionic Creator to be the tool that we are going to build this app in, but there are other tools out there, and you can just go ahead and just start clicking them. So there's Buildfire. That one is a little pricey. Once we have to publish it, it's gonna be, we have to pay a little bit of money, and that one's like $60 a month, and we don't want to do that. And then there's .bubble, and then just keep on going.
Okay.
There's Thunkable, and then I think the very last one is Drop Source. With Thunkable, that one is the only, I think that's the free one, and it's free-ish until you want to have ads or make some kind of revenue off of it, but it is free, but it's not quite as powerful as Ionic, and that's why we chose that one. And so that slide will be up there. We'll have all these slides in our GitHub repository, and so you all will be able to access all of that. But we chose Ionic because it is more of a WYSIWYG, it's more of a drag and drop, and it works really well on Android devices and on iOS devices, because we do have a nice mix of that in here. And if you are going to create an app, you want it to work on both, so you don't have to create 2 versions of the same thing. Okay. Once again, yes, that's the name of it. Is that the last slide?
It is.
Okay.
How much is Ionic?
Ionic is, I think, $29 a month.
So to participate, you don't have to.
You don't have to pay.
You don't have to pay.
No.
But if you want to download the code at the end of it, you will.
Yeah.
So in the last presentation where we kind of hook up everything in the repository, I'm going to use my personal account and download everything, and so you'll have a copy of it, so you won't have to pay for it for the final one.
Yeah, I would recommend it on for this project, because this is, I mean, it's going to be a real app, but it's not for a client. It's not your app. It's, you know, an app. It's an example app. I wouldn't pay for it for that. I'd pay for it for your project, and you know what you know, things that you need. But we chose that one because as a group, Spark Tuscaloosa can afford to pay that for a little while. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ryan to actually show us how to get started on this.
All right. So I'm just going to Ionic Creator there at creator.ionic.io, and all I have done is created an account. So I have not in this login. I have not created a project yet, and this is going to be very much demo and show and tell, and a little bit of the stumbling through it as someone that hasn't done this very much, to go through it. And for anyone who has a laptop, I don't mind feedback that says, hey, try such and such, because I'm going to talk through where I'm at and what I'm doing and what I'm trying to accomplish so that we can get through this. So I'm going to start a new project, and so the organizers for the workshop we actually came up with an idea of what the goal of the app would be, and we said, hey, let's create a tool, an app that we could survey our members with, whether it's, hey, we're going to do a board game night. What board game do we want to play? Hey, we're interested in where we want to go out to eat together. Oh, hey, what? And actually, I'll try a quick poll of the room by show of hands. For your smartphone, for those who have smartphones, who all has an iOS device? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And who has an Android device? 3. Okay. Or do you have 2?
No, I just left my hand up.
Okay, that's fine.
That's what it usually is on the airplane, by the way.
Rotate, but it doesn't.
Good to know. So the environment is set up where I can preview in a Android or an iOS device. So I'll probably leave it in iOS, but I'll show you the two. So again, the idea was, let's create an environment where we can the app would be the ability to take to poll our members and survey them on a question or set of questions that would be a survey. So we're going to call this Spark Survey. Pretty simple. And then I have a couple options here. Do I want to have a side menu, or do I want to have tabs, or do I want to have both, or do I want to have none? And for this, I don't need any of the. I really have a pretty straightforward workflow. And I'm going to go ahead with blank, and then I'm going to walk you through. Here also, I've looked up the versions here. This is in an alpha, so it's not yet in a beta, which you normally go alpha, beta, release candidate, and then you launch. So this is pretty early stages. I've looked up what 3 is. 3 is similar to 1, but it has a different export style for the code. For my purposes, for this workshop, 1.3x is, or 1.3.2 is fine. And I don't really know if there's more differences beyond that. So Spark Survey, blank, and creating the project. So I'm going to go full screen here, just so we can make the most of our window here. And can I get rid of this? I don't care. What I see here is a phone. I'm going to go to 75% so I can see the whole of the phone. But if I was at 100%, I can move up and down the page with the scroll bar here. And I suppose if I wanted to, I could also rotate it and be able to move horizontally in case my app needed to have. Oh, there's a little rotate icon right here. And in case I needed portrait versus landscape, I could design that type of layout too. So, but for my purposes, I'm going to stay with 75% and stay in portrait mode. And that gives me, I think, what I need to be able to work with the canvas, if you think about that like that. So on the left, I have page or pages. So I could add more pages, and I will. But right now, we're just going to sort of walk through the layout of the entire screen and what's going on. So again, I mentioned iPhone versus Android. If I wanted, I could just change the skin, the look and feel. It still has really that similar look and feel here. I think the dimensions changed a little bit because the phones are not exactly the same. I can get rid of things like the status bar. I can turn off the device skin because sometimes you don't care what that looks like, especially if you cared about like, so maybe you said, hey, press right there, and you drew an arrow. You know, you might choose to say press that button, but so for my purposes, maybe I'll zoom out back to 100 and see if it'll work, or 90, so I have a little bit more screen. You know, so so I'm back on the canvas without the skin, and I could even turn off the status bar. So I'm just now focusing on that look and feel for just what I'm programming. On the left, I have a number of components. Heading looks like the ability to bring it in paragraph, looks like the ability to drag and drop in text. So as we said, it's a WYSIWYG environment. It already tells you, hey, this is a heading. This is some friendly markdown. I could bring in buttons. You can choose 1, 2, 3. If I wanted, I can click on the 2, and I can say, hey, I want one more. And now it's 1, 2, 2, 3 because I duplicated 2. I could get rid of 2. I could get rid of 3, and it knows how to. Let me try that one again. I could click on 3 and get rid of 3, and it knew how to make 1 and 2 equally divided amongst the space that was present. You have a lot of options. I can bring in buttons that already has a call to action. I could put in HTML. I could bring in an image, a slider in case we want to ask somebody. Did I pick the right one? Oh, a slider is not what I thought it was. A slider is not this range one. So a range is where you get to like, and I don't even know where range went. A range is where you get to slide, and that's what I was thinking it was, where you get to slide from left to right. I believe slider here was more of the idea of a carousel, where you put multiple things on there and it would rotate. So again, there's a lot of different things in here. I can bring in list items. I'm going to get rid of some of the space, get rid of the thing. Actually, I'm going to put more things down here, and you notice that I can just move up and down with my mouse, and I'm the trackpad, and I'm scrolling. If I keep adding more items, if I keep hitting duplicate, I should be able to move up and down inside, and all I'm doing is moving my fingers on the trackpad. So some other things of interest on the right, every time I click on a different thing, my properties change. So it lets me, you know, I've got one kitten here, but I could choose to have another image of another set of animals or something. If I click on the tap me, now I'm looking at, okay, what happens when you click on, should it go to a page? What should the text be? So each of these are set up where when I click over here, I can change the heading to whatever I want it to be. Markdown is a markup language that people are used to, where I can put, you know, text that is to be underlined if I put it the right syntax. And actually, that was 2 ways to get bold, it seems. I don't know Markdown by heart, but there's a lot of free resources about Markdown as a markup language. Yes. So last thing I'll show you before we actually start trying to build something is the preview icon here. And when I click that, I'm able to see, and if I had the skin on there, you would still see the skin. So this is my build environment, and this is my preview environment. And if I just use the mouse and the trackpad and scroll, I'm able to get to the rest of the screen, just like putting your finger and dragging would do. Okay, so I'm going to blank out the page by clicking on each one of these elements and clicking the X. So I get back to a blank or a neutral starting point. And it was our thoughts that, and actually on this one, I wonder, can I get to the list? Yeah, I'll show you this on the left. Go ahead. So I cannot, it does not seem like I can do it there, and it doesn't seem like I can do it here, but what I can do is click on form, which wraps all of my inputs, and then I can trash it here. I could choose to duplicate it here, which means it gives me 2 of them. And since I've gone ahead and duplicated it, I will trash both of them. a form is very similar to an HTML form. It is the container that all of your inputs would go into. So typical inputs in an HTML form are text, checkboxes, radio, text area, the ability to upload an image, all of those, and I'll quickly show you on the left here. Checkbox, that's the form container itself. Input lets you type one line of text. Radio lets you select between A, B, C options, but you only have one. Range is the slider, which you get to, on a scale of 0 to 10, you can pick something. Search is like an input field, like this one right here, but it has just a different icon, but it still falls within the form. And notice when I brought search in, it put a form around it. Also select, which is going to be your drop down that you're probably used to, where you click and you can see a drop down appear, of your various options. Text area, this is where you can type paragraphs. You can put multiple lines of text, and toggle on or off, Boolean, so you have your true false. So again, all of that fit into the form. Now, if I had put something else in here between it, let's say I had put spacer, right? And then I come back and put input, I have a feeling that it's going to make a second form, and it did. Because there was something between it, and the container couldn't contain the space and the form items. So this is just trial and error, and there's no right way to start about doing this. It's, can you figure out how to lay your components out to the point you're happy? So again, I'm gonna delete through the items that, and get me back to a blank canvas, and so there we are. So we thought this particular app should have 3 different layouts, 3 different templates. So the first one, so let's call this one Splash, or actually we'll give it the name of the app. No, we're gonna call it Splash because I want that to show up across the top, even if it's redundant to what it is. We're gonna have a splash page, we're gonna have a list of surveys, and we're gonna have the survey itself. So here's Splash. And our thoughts on this one was, let's bring an image in. All right, now I wanna upload an image. Well, I'm gonna click this button right here. It's gonna let me select a file from my system. I'm gonna type in Spark, and I'm gonna pick this image, it uploads it, and we have an image there on the screen. Now, make full width. I'm okay with a little bit of a border, right? All right, so the next thing we need to do is probably add some text here. I'm just gonna bring in a heading, and I'm gonna just put the name of the app, nothing fancy. Spark survey. Almost wrote Tuscaloosa. And let's say center it, and then I wanna change the color. And I'm going to simply eyeball this and attempt to match the blue above. You can also type in the hex code if you happen to know one. So I'm happy with that. And then maybe one more thing that says join or start. Nothing fancy there. So I've got a button. People know to click a button. There's nothing else you can do because I've not given them any other calls to action. All right, so that's my splash page. And maybe I go ahead and say that this button should be linked to my second page. So for reference, I have page and I have splash. And if this checkbox up here is in a checked state, I'm sorry, you can use the checkbox up there in the top left and you can save. So that lets you come in and try some work, and if you don't like it, you didn't have to hit save and you can leave, and I don't believe it auto saves as it goes. Don't quote me on that, but note when I moused over it, it says save, and when I clicked it, it says saving, and then it says all changes saved. So I'm gonna hit the preview, I'm gonna see my screen, and that doesn't do anything, that doesn't do anything, but this takes me to page 2. Cool, I've gotten to where I wanna be. So I'm going to hit back to the build screen, and are there any questions so far? Sure. Sure. Yep. Yep. And if you happen to have an image program that has an eyedropper, that works as well. There's a number of ways to do that. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go to page 2. So probably going to just give this a title, and this is a little finicky little spot here where it does not always want to give me the mouse pointer. It may be because of how the projector is hooked up, I'm not sure. But we're just going to say surveys, right? So that we know that this is the page where you can see the list of surveys. So I think that I would like to have a list here, because let's say there were multiple surveys we had out to our group, where for an upcoming dinner we wanted to know where people wanted to go eat, but also for an upcoming game night we wanted to know what game they wanted to play. So there's 2 different surveys, 2 different purposes, and if you answer one, you were participating in one, but answering in the other one, they're mutually exclusive. So we think that it makes sense to have a list here. So we had seen down here in the list and the options a number of list things. And I'm going to pull in a list item, a container list item. I'm just doing a couple things so we can see what they look like and see if we can determine, do any of these make sense? And actually, that's just a group of 3, a group of the first thing I brought in. Do any of these make sense for what we want to use? I'm thinking that our survey would have a title. I'm thinking that there could be some additional details about the survey. Maybe when it was created, when we hope that people would answer by, how many people have participated, maybe. When I think about that, this one gives me the ability to put a picture. It gives me a title. It gives me a line 2. So that's an option. This one, I've got markup or markdown, and I could put line 2 down here, and I think I do that by putting 2 blank lines, but if anybody knows in markdown the right way to get the next line to be on the next line. Well, it mimicked it exactly over here, but it didn't mimic 1 and 1. Yeah, so I think you're forced to have that paragraph space there, if you will. So I don't know if that one's going to do what I want. It may. Over here, I have content. I have note. Now, what does note do? So note is some text on the right. I think that's good to know. I have, again, on the main item, I can put in the title of the question. I could put the note here. So those are very similar there. I could put an icon, which so now these 2 feel the same. Like when I think about it, these are almost the same. And then let's see this one. This one has the second line. It's a little tighter. Maybe it's got the avatar, so you can put the picture of the person who uploaded it. I don't know what we're going to have. We haven't defined the data model, and I don't know what we want from in our list. The bottom one?
Either the bottom or the one with the square image. Either one.
Okay.
You can have a picture of the game. I know if you just said, "Hey, y'all want to play code names," people might not know what that is. But if you showed them the box, they might know what that is.
So let me make sure we're framing where we are at the moment. These are lists of surveys. So this one could be where to eat. And you're good. You're good.
The bottom one, Wes is right.
And this one could be what to play. So all of these are survey topics. With inside of it, we could have 1 or more questions. So so you get the idea. So let's say that this is the one we go with. All right. And so what we're doing is designing the layout. We will not be controlling the content, well, exactly the content. We're hopefully controlling where the content will be, but we don't control what the text actually will be. So I'm going to get rid of the ones that don't match what I want, and I'm gonna do it over here. I think it's a little faster. And I'm gonna get rid of this one as well. Okay, so what to play, and it's got a second line. So maybe over here the text could be created on, and then we put a date stamp or something. And that could be sufficient, you know, where the title of the question and an image. And let's see if we can find a quick avatar. And I could have dragged, but I didn't. So there's that, and there's that. So pretty easy to lay out some of this, but I'm also going to duplicate this, because this later, when we get the code, we're going to let the person who ties the database, the back end into the front end, it's going to be useful for them to see, hey, there's a list, and inside of the list is a repeated item, and that repeated item is survey 1 and survey 2 and survey 3, so you know how to manipulate, how to get onto the next page. So do we need some text on here that says, like, click a survey to begin it or something? Or is it sufficient just like this and let them click through? Looks like a button? What else do y'all think? Of course. How about an arrow to let you think that you're going somewhere? And I think an arrow to the right.
If this was in the website, what would you do? Oh yeah, that works.
Does it?
I don't know, in my head that looks like you can do something with that.
Okay, so undo. No, undo. Oh, just on the keyboard shortcut. It's perfect. So I'm gonna delete it from here because I feel more confident, and then I'm gonna make 3, because when I'm ready to hand this off to the next person who's gonna work on this, I want someone to realize, yeah, you can click on that, but also someone could change that if they wanted to later. Okay, so the next thing we'll do is create a third page, and again, it's going to be blank just like the others, and I'm going to call it survey because we're on a single survey page. So that's what the title is going to be, and I'm going to quickly come back to each of these list items, and when you click on it, I'm going to let them be taken to page 3, and each one of them are going to go to page 3. Now, I have an idea in my mind when this is actually an app, it would be more like page 3 with the survey ID as part of it. But I don't think we get into that right now, because all we're worried about is trying to define a little bit of the flow and a little bit of the layout. All right, so let's go take a look and see where we're at. I'm going to hit the save. I'm going to go to the splash screen, and I'm going to hit the preview icon. All right, so again, nothing I can do with here. I click. Not down here, if I click here, I'm taken to my survey page. If I click here, I'm taken back. I click the first one, I'm on my survey. I click here, I'm taken back. So I like that. Let's take a look and see if Android looks the same, just to make sure that things are working. Preview, start, next. And I always like to use this button on my Android, but and that seemed to take me back completely out of the app. And that may be the intended functionality, but it looks like you can also click on one of the surveys and use this to go back as well. So, all right, let's go back to iOS. Any questions so far? Okay, so I'm going to go to the survey page. Now, when you think about a survey, there's a number of ways you can collect information. So I'm going to go to Google Forms, and I'm just going to click here and actually quickly show you guys some of what Google offers when they let you create a form. Of course, theming. I'm not worried about the theming. I'm more worried about what are the types of questions you can ask. So when I click here, I see I'm able to make a question, and what I want to look at is actually this. So you can ask for a short answer, a paragraph. So it could be, what's your name? It could be, give me a description about yourself. It could be multiple choice, where you get to pick one out of a group. Could be check boxes where you can check multiple out of a group. A drop down, you guys are familiar with that. Linear scale, that's real similar to the slider that we saw, the range. And I don't know that either of these make a lot of sense for our survey. Maybe date and time, but I think we can satisfy both of those with just the input field. So I think that where we care about, it's these 5. And I'm gonna just quickly create some of those, but I wanted to give you just sort of some context about what we're trying to create. Okay, so so maybe we have the title of the survey. We'll put that in as the first thing, and it could be the where to eat title. So I think every survey is going to likely have at least some title, and then maybe we have some questions. So because I'm not concerned about the exact questions for the purposes of this survey, and I'm more interested in laying out what the interface looks like to be able to ask those 5 questions, I'm actually going to not be asking all the where to eat questions, because that's not the goal. The goal is to make the layout. The goal is to present the options. So, and all I'm gonna do is pull up the same thing on my phone that you guys just saw, where we have the ability to see those options. I'm just using that as a cheat sheet, so I'm not back and forth. So the first one on the list is short answer. We're gonna make the container first because it seems like the logical place. I'm gonna try putting this in there first. Done. I'm gonna try putting this inside. There we go. So I put the input question, the actual place where you type first, and then I put the heading inside it. So if you notice, inside the container has the form, inside the form is the heading and the input, and then the last one was going to be the spacer. So I'm going to put that here, drop it, and then I'm going to manipulate it down to 10 pixels, and then I'm going to take it and put it inside the form, the container, and there it is. Okay, container contains form, which contains heading, input, and spacer. So then if I duplicate container, I get a whole other question with its heading. It's like I made a folder with a heading, the place to type, and the space to move on. So on the second one, I'll click here. I'm going to call this Q2. And this one, it's not input, it's paragraph. And I'm sorry, they call it text area, which is like a paragraph. And all I'm doing is putting enough information here so that the person would know. On this one, I actually have to delete that because it's not the right form type. So I'm just going to put the X on that. And then I'm going to come over here into the text area, put it on the bottom, and then I'm going to drag it between the two. And there it is. So, and then notice this little piece right here, the little corner. That's actually where I think you have the ability to make it a little taller if you need to. And I don't know if that's where I get to do that here. I see that I have the ability to define some classes. If you think about HTML, you have the ability to specify, hey, the style of such and such is, and I have placeholder text, you know, where I can type in lines of text ahead of time. But I don't know if that's going to be useful here. I actually am interested to see what this looks like, or if that's actually useful. I'm going to hit save and preview it, and it does bring me here, and that does work, where it's an anchor I can pull down and I can have more room to type. If I click in here, I can type my answer, and I have the ability to have multiple lines. So I think that's working the way we'd want. Wrong button. So then we'll duplicate again. The next one on my list was going to be radio button. So again, who remembers the car stereo a long time ago where you pressed in the button manually to press your pre-select? I think that's where the radio button terminology came from, because you could only be on one of your presets at a time. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but it's stuff from our past that comes forward. So I'm gonna use this right here because notice the green box goes all the way around. I'm gonna say Q3 radio, and it's gonna say, and this one is ultimately select one, and then okay. So I'm gonna delete the radio and bring in, or delete the old input field and bring in the radio. I'm gonna put it at the bottom, and then I'm gonna drag it to where I want it to be, which is between the two. And that's where it's select one or something like that, where it says A, right? Or B or C, correct. Okay. And then what's interesting about this is in the web environment where we're previewing here, this looks nothing like what you would see on iOS or on Android. When I type in here, I'm typing in text. When I type in here, I'm typing in text. It actually would bring up the keyboard for you, right? On this, what does it do on iOS when you pick something and you have to select from a list? It gives you a center one and one above and one below, and you get to scroll through it, if I remember right. But here, it just gives me a checkbox because it doesn't know how to mimic the iOS or Android environments just right. So it's not exactly what you're expecting, but it does sort of work. If you could preview it on your phone, which that's part of the pro version of their offering, you would actually see what the native integration does look like for that type of input field. So, and of course, they've got this little advertisement down here too. So, yep. Okay, so we have one or two more I want to do real quick. The next one is going to be a duplicate of this, and we're going to call it Q4. This one's check, and obviously that's where you get to select multiple, right? And I'm going to remove these because they're not the right question type. And I'm going to put them in here again as checkboxes. And I'm going to change my question. All right, so checkbox, I'm going to just drop this right here at the bottom, and then I'm going to drag it up like I've been doing the other ones as well. All right, and scrolling down to see if it's in the right spot. I don't know where my question went. Right? So I've got container form. I think question 4 is inside of the container for question 3, which doesn't seem to make sense. So we're going to get rid of that. We're going to just duplicate container 3. There we go. All right. So Q3, we're going to make that 4. It's going to be called checkbox. Select multiple. And what I was trying to do was delete the radio options inside. It may be easier to do it over here, but B goes and C goes. There we go. So then we're going to try to bring the checkbox back in, put it at the very bottom. It's been my pattern, and then drag it up and put it between the heading and the... It's a little tedious. Right. I'm going to put it in Q3 or put it somewhere up here for a second. I've tried. It doesn't seem to do that. And I'm locked up as well. So I did save. I'm going to give just a refresh and see if we can catch back up to where we need to be. This survey page, this container page. So the checkbox was in the right spot. I didn't have to do anything. Okay, hey, I don't know. So we're gonna just name this A, and we're gonna duplicate it. We're gonna make just B and C quickly. So we have an idea of obviously what the checkbox does. And I think, and I'm probably gonna skip even doing the drop down because I think we get an idea of what these all do. So preview that real quick. come down here, and notice I'm scrolling on the page. And again, with checkboxes, I can check multiple or all. But because they are all grouped together and they're part of a single form input, I can select many, unlike over here where I can only select one. Okay, and I think the last thing we want to do is maybe put a submit button, right? Okay, so we'll find our button. Thank you. There it is, and we're just going to drag it to the very bottom, right?
And so just to clarify right now, what you're doing is you're painting the picture of what all the options are for how we want to ask this question and how we want to get the answer back.
Yep. So it's possible that whomever is actually going to draft the question wants to ask 3 inputs, and they would just duplicate. They would in the backend database that hasn't been built yet. Someone would create the question with 3 inputs, and then the code would know, hey, I'm going to use Q1 3 times, or the input 3 times, because it knew our form, our field type. And it knew, hey, there was no options for this field type. It was just, here was the name of the field, here was the question for that field, this thing you're answering. Or maybe they had 2 different radio buttons. Hey, pick between, do you want to meet on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then do you want to meet at 6, 6:30, or 7? And that could be the extent of the questions. Each one of these, but we wanted to make this multi-purpose. So we had no clue what they were going to ask. We just wanted to present enough so it could support what is yet to be created. So down here, another button. We probably want to say submit, and I don't know what to link this to. Yeah, so probably a confirmation page. So maybe we link it back to the first page. Maybe we link it to a 4th page, which is super easy to make. And the 4th page might be just a confirmation, as Wes says. And maybe the page has some elements from the front, but all I'm going to put on here for right now is just thanks, or thank you, and then a paragraph that says your survey has been accepted, right? And we have no clue if it's really been accepted. All we're doing is laying out the page flow, right? So on survey itself, and I come down here to the submit button, I'm going to link it to confirmation. Okay, so I'm going to hit save, I'm going to hit the splash page, and I'm going to hit preview, and now we can walk through the whole thing. Start. So which one of our 3 Monopoly questions do we want to ask something about? Let's pick this one here. And then let's type in some information. Hey, maybe that question was, what's your name? Maybe this question was, what are the names of your pets? So I've got a Cooper. But maybe it says list your pets on separate lines. Maybe this one says, what's your favorite color? I picked one. And maybe this one says, do you like tacos? Yes. Do you like tacos? Yes. And do you like tacos? Yes. And then submit. And right. And so that's sort of the idea of how we're creating in this. You don't have to be very technical, WYSIWYG environment. And what normally would happen is you would then hand this off to a programmer who is going to work to connect the dots between what you created with the flow of pages and what will be, or what was already created, but for us, what has not yet been created, the back-end environment. So that's the demo, because that's as far as we wanted to get in Workshop 1.
Almost like that as much as that, Steve, to be honest with you.
Yep. So we can probably turn on the lights and open it up to questions, because I'm done mostly up here. Awesome. Well, I also have screen share going, so we got audio still if we need it. So what did you guys think? Does it seem pretty straightforward if you wanted to, if you needed to do it yourself? We might need a survey.
I like it. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's real intuitive, you know, you might have to know a little bit about the kind of elements that you're gonna stick in there, but, you know, the fact that you can play with it and that it's free to play with it, fantastic.
Sure. Plus, very similar to XD, you could prototype. You could use this just for prototyping. Even if no one ever took what you created with this tool and moved it on to the next step, it could be just for, hey, heck, if I was at a startup weekend or something, I could make an app like this, and people would say, oh my gosh, I didn't know that you could create something that fast.
Yeah.
It almost
Also
looks
share it, too. They
right.
give you a link to where you can share it to people. I don't know if you said that already.
Yeah, actually, so actually I'll do that. So right here, back in the project, I'm going to use this share button, and I hope the link is something that's going to be pretty easy. So share. So we're going to give you a bit.ly because that bit.lys are faster and easier, right? So bit.ly, that's twice. Butly, right? And always. All the accounts. So I don't know what they're asking me. Other. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're gonna hit create, and I'm gonna type in the long URL, and I'm gonna get rid of all of that noise, and I'm gonna create a custom tag. Is that where I get to put the? Oh, that'd be fine. Oh, I thought I'd get. Oh, customize right here. So we're gonna do this Spark survey with hyphens. Demo. Or actually Spark survey workshop. Sorry for the long typing, but you can actually type it and know what it says. Workshop 1, because there will be a workshop 2 later, somehow. So if you wanted to go to bit.ly/spark-survey-workshop 1, you could actually pull that up and do the same demo I was doing here on in a web environment on your phone. Bit.ly /spark-survey-workshop 1. It's easier to type in words than it is numbers, I think. Quickly, I launched this on my phone with the bit.ly link, and as we expect, you hit start, you can hit one of the surveys. Now, again, because it's a web version and it's not on the device, the UI does not look like what it would normally look like if it was on Android or iOS. But it does give you the ability to share it with someone and they could get a feel for what it is.
Yeah, we haven't published it, so.
Right.
Yeah. Cool, let's give Ryan a round of applause.
Yeah.